Hello, everybody. I've been away for a little bit. Life has been lifing. Since I came back, I've been working on a job for a large energy drink company, which has been like 16-hour days for forever. Still working on the Ukraine documentary, Creative Force, and also start doing some stuff on Concrete River, which kind of ties into what I want to talk about this week, which is DEI, the dirty word that has been newly minted by the Trump administration: diversity, equity, and inclusion. I wrote about this last week, and actually, it seemed to be good timing because it seemed like a lot of people started writing about it that same week, including Justin Simien, who's the director of Dear White People, both the movie and the TV show. His Substack has launched recently. He wrote an article about DEI, which I'm going to reference in this week's topic/rant. And basically, what I want to say about DEI is that it's this boogeyman that everyone from both the entertainment industry to the government to just regular everyday people are blaming for all of the problems of society, mostly to do with economic inequality. Somehow DEI uh, has borne the brunt of all of that, which is not surprising to me. Every time something goes wrong, it seems blame the other, and other usually means black people, is the name of the game of what to do. So I want to peel back some of the layers around this topic, and let's just start with how DEI started. Now, if you were to listen to most people who are uneducated about this topic, it seems like we forced all these companies and governments to do DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And that is not true. After the murder of George Floyd, obviously there were a lot of protests and uproars about racial inequality and how that led to his murder. And so a lot of companies, on their own volition, decided we're going to do our part to right the wrongs of American history. They decided to do this on their own. Nobody forced them to do it. Nobody said you should do it. Nobody said X company should do it. We just said, hey, we're sick of this shit. Something should happen. And that's what they decided to do. Now, truth be told, whenever a bunch of large corporations and also politicians say, hey, we're going to start righting racial wrongs, usually the immediate reaction from those who are considered the other, people of color, black people, is to give them the side eye, to look at them and say, okay, that sounds good, but let's see what you actually do. Because as history repeats, a lot of times promises are made and they are not kept. So, what a lot of these companies did was they were going to commit to broadening their hiring search, which means, let's take an example for a Warner Brothers, they were going to start basically making other communities more aware of the jobs that they had. They were going to launch special initiatives to bring people of color in, also more women in, and just give them more opportunities to be a part of said company. Now, I think it goes without saying, but let me just say it right now that this does not mean that the standards are dropping. It just means you are casting a wider net. You're widening the pool. So obviously there are standards that have to be met in order for you to qualify for the position, but they're not just going to do what Hollywood companies usually do, which is I'm just going to hire the guy that I know, and it's usually a guy, because I know him. And because this town is run mostly upon word of mouth and personal relationships, if the people who run the industry are mostly white men, that's mostly who they know. Now, they may know a couple of people who fall outside of that category, but that's mostly who they know. So that's why it stayed the same way and why it continues to stay the same way after decades. So they decided that they were going to not only bring more people into the companies, but they were going to champion initiatives to tell more diverse stories. Now, what that should have looked like is giving more funding and also marketing to stories from other ethnicities, races, genders, gender expressions, sexuality, and accessibility and disability. What that ended up being is a lot of marketing folks saying, hey, I have a degree in a bunch of stats, what diversity looks like, and I'm the expert, and we're going to do diversity our way. We're not going to start funding people who have this lived experience and give them the agency to tell their own stories. We're going to dictate what the stories look like. Now, if you were an established figure, that meant you possibly got some more attention, maybe some more money, maybe some more access. But if you were not, usually meant we're going to give you a job to tell the story that we've already composed, which is usually our existing IP. And you can put some women, maybe some brown folks in there and call it a day. That's our diversity. And especially if you are now getting this opportunity that you've been fighting for, you'll just say, yeah, I'll take the job and do this one time. And hopefully the next time I'll get the chance to do it the way that I want to do it, which will be more authentic. And unfortunately, because a lot of these companies are run by tech companies and it's all about control, what happens is you do it one time and then you get another job doing it a second time. And you're hoping like, hey, that thing you promised where you were just going to fund this project that I have, which doesn't fit within what you understand diversity to be. Can we do that now? And a lot of times the answer was no. And here's the other thing about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I've touched on already, but I'll just dive into it. Diversity doesn't just mean skin color. I know that's what it gets placed on, but diversity, again, it's not only skin color, but it's culture, it's immigrant experiences, it's sexuality, it's gender expression, it's accessibility. One of the things that's come up now with the rolling back of DEI initiatives from the government is they've added DEIA for accessibility. So anybody who has accessibility needs, be it Down syndrome, which is a documentary that I'm in the beginning phases of working on to get off the ground, they would get government funding and that's getting cut. So pretty much anything where if you are not a white male, that is considered to be DEI, which cuts about maybe 60% of the country. So only 40% of the country is qualified to do anything. But let me not get on to a tangent about that. But yeah, diversity was dictated. It was somebody else's understanding of it. And as studies have shown, there's Forbes articles where the primary, I don't want to say the primary, but the greatest beneficiaries of DEI, affirmative action initiatives, are white women. And we could see this inside some of the movies that were getting released. It was a lot of there were some black movies that came out. There were some movies from other experiences, but it was a lot of mostly already established white women that were getting a lot of the attention. And they were good movies, don't get me wrong. But that's just what I saw happening. There was beginnings of showing black and brown and all different kinds of experiences, and then it just ended up being the experiences of white women, which is again a small percentage of, still the largest percentage was white men and their experiences and what they wanted to do, and then a little bit more of white women, and then the rest was just divvied up between everybody else. And somehow this got twisted into that all the brown people were taking all of the jobs and ruining all of the movies, when our percentage share of the actual movies that came out was very small. And this kind of gets into something that Justin Simien wrote about, which was referencing a Hollywood Reporter article that showcased a study that was done by McKinsey and Company, a large consulting firm, that revealed in their work that if companies were actually, specifically companies in Hollywood, were actually to focus more on diversity initiatives, they would make an additional $30 billion. So rather by not focusing on diversity, by blaming diversity for their terrible business decisions of trying to get streaming platforms and fill them up with as much media as possible. By doing that and not focusing as much as they could on actual diversity efforts, which means funding them, giving the creators agency, letting the creators be creators instead of trying to control and dictate the narratives that they say. By not doing that, they are losing $30 billion, which, if you look at some of the books for some of these companies, some of them would not have had to sell. Maybe Paramount, if they had stopped doing a bunch of different Taylor Sheridan shows and actually started bringing in new, fresh voices that people wanted to see, they would have had to sell their company. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I didn't look at their books. I'm not an accountant, but I'm just going to throw that out there. And this brings up an interesting pattern that I've seen and that historians have seen, is that whenever the other, and this is mostly in America, black and brown people start making gains, companies and individuals would rather almost destroy the thing that they have built rather than give somebody else an equal seat at the table. Because A, they would have to compete on equal footing, and for the longest time they haven't had to do that. A lot of the companies that we have in existence now are there just because they have destroyed the competition. So if you're talking about an industry letting other people in and compete, that's scary to a lot of people. So they don't want to do that. So instead of creating an equal playing field and actually giving audiences what they want, because audiences' demographics are changing, no matter what happens, that's just what's happening, and it's going to happen. So by not serving the audience that's here and the audience that's coming, you are basically running your business into the ground. And rather than give funding and opportunity to the people that can address the audience that's coming, you would rather just do the same thing, hope that AI can save you, and hope that things work out. And I've seen quite a bit of pushback from people that have said that DEI was a good idea, but it went too far and it was just too woke and it wasn't done the right way. Now, and this makes me think of the fact that our industry has been around since the 30s. And Hollywood really got started with Birth of a Nation, which is a very racist film, which happened to be the first blockbuster. Now, there are other movies that made before that, but this is the one that really began the foundation of an industry centered around moviegoing, and that being like a public activity. And we've come full circle, whereas racism began the industry, and racism is probably going to destroy the industry. It won't destroy movie making, but the actual industry that has funded it, it may in fact bring it down. That's been around for almost a century. We've had narratives that have mostly been dictated by white men showcasing their narratives. There have been good movies that have come out of that. There have been bad movies that have come out of that. But there's been 100 years of runway in order to see what that looks like. And now, somehow, DEI really was implemented in like 2021. It's now 2025, but they started rolling it back since 2024. So that's like, what, 3 years, 3.5 years? So it took 100 years to figure out like what works and what's good and what's not good. And somehow 3 years is enough for everybody else. That's all you get, which is the way that the industry has worked with black movies in general and other movies, is that anybody who's established, which is usually white dudes, get a lot of latitude and leeway. Anybody else, you get one chance and that's it. That one movie didn't work out, so it just doesn't work on its concept, which is, and I would again point to Justin Simien's article, not a narrative that is true. It's just a narrative that the larger entertainment corporations are committing to, which means they are ultimately committed to doing things the same way that they've always been done and representing the same people that they've always represented, even if it's to the detriment of the way their business is structured. So that's where we're at. Study after study has shown that the industry, in order to survive, has to start creating and fostering the stories of a wider group of people. Their financial value has been proven. Read not only the study by McKinsey and Company, but also the UCLA Diversity Report. There's been countless other studies that have shown, hey, when you ask a bunch of people what do they want to see more people from different cultures, different ethnicities, different experiences showcased on screen, and even in a theater. A lot of people say that they would go to a theater if there were things they wanted to watch. So you have the data showing what they want to watch and the method that they would like to watch it, and you're just not doing it because racism. And that all sounds, it's very dark and depressing when you think about it. But this also proves that these companies need us more than we need them. And especially as a filmmaker of color, I've known that fact for a long time. And I think a lot of other filmmakers have known it. And we just figure out a way to make it happen anyway. Starting with Oscar Micheaux way back around the 30s, he would just make his own movies and get them in theaters and show them to people. And we've had countless other people do that. Mario Van Peebles did it. Tyler Perry, which that's a whole complicated thing that I don't want to get into about my feelings about Tyler Perry. But either way, he did it on his own and he's got an audience. So we have the methods and the tools to do that ourselves. Even if you take stuff like YouTube outside of it, because that also is a giant tech company, there are still other ways for us to make things and get those things in front of people. And as long as you have the means to create a piece of art and get that art in front of an audience, you have a chance of not only just supporting yourself, but also building momentum. And that's what I'm doing with Concrete River. Because I had to go to Chicago, it got pushed a little bit, and I was debating the whole short film versus feature film thing. But knowing what I know about how the industry is going in regards to the story about Concrete River, it being a story featuring mostly black and brown cast, and the subject matter being about not just homelessness, but like community and people who are just trying to make ends meet. That's not the type of story that Hollywood wants to give lots of money to. So our tactic is going to be just doing whatever we can to make it possible. I met actually with an actor who I've known for over a decade, J.Q. Cole. I worked with him on my very first short film out here in LA, which we did not finish. So now we met up just the other day, and his life experiences mirror the character of Travis. He has both experienced a brief bout of homelessness and also is dealing with some family issues. So the material really spoke to him. So he and I have just committed that we're going to make this happen one way or another. And I think in this current era of Hollywood and movie making, that's just what you have to commit to. So that's what we're committing to. We're going to have a table read in mid-April. My casting directors are hoping to attend also and find some other people to read for some other parts. And we're just going to make it happen. And I think that's what we have to do right now. Whether companies want to push for DEI, where they realize how important that is to their business, we cannot be influenced by that. We just have to tell our stories and get them out there, because our goal as filmmakers is to give our perspectives to the audience, because without the audience, really Hollywood is nothing. So we have to realize that and go directly to them. That's what we're doing. I will keep everybody posted about that and keep on telling stories, and I will talk to you all hopefully next week, if not very soon. Take care.